joining me today for another episode on the Anchored in Messiah program right here on HRN Revive TV. Today's episode is titled, Make No Mention of Their Names, which is a thought taken from Exodus chapter 23 and verses 13. And it reads, Pay attention to all that I have said to you, and make no mention of the names of other gods, nor let it be heard on your lips. So at the beginning of this verse, it says to first pay attention to all that I have said to you, which means to be aware and diligent, or to be watchful and mindful. So when reading this verse, it should trigger Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verses 4 that we read daily or recite daily. Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one. And as I said before in earlier teachings, that God will not have a co-rival or coexist with another because He is one. Which now brings us to Isaiah chapter 42 and verses 8. And it reads, I am the Lord, that is my name, and my glory will I not give to another, neither my praise unto graven images. Also, we read in Exodus chapter 23 and verses 13, it says not to mention the names of other gods and not to let their names be heard on your lips. So in Hebrew, the word name is the Hebrew word Shem. And in Hebrew thought, a name is more than just a name. Your name is your reputation, and your reputation is what people know you by. For example, when you meet someone for the very first time, you don't ask just for their first name, but their last name as well, because a person's last name is what they are known by or identified with, which can sometimes connect us with the reputation. So again, your name is more than just who you are addressed by. It's your reputation, whether good or bad. In 1 Corinthians chapter 5 and 6, it reads, For although there may be so-called gods in heaven or on earth, as indeed there are many gods and many lords, yet for us there is one God, the Father, from whom are all things and for whom we exist, and one Lord, Yeshua the Messiah, through whom are all things and through whom we exist. So, with that being said, do you think the names of these gods had a good reputation among reputable people who worship them? I wouldn't think so. So, regarding Exodus chapter 23 and verses 13 that we read at the beginning of this presentation, the Faith Life Study Bible says this: the antiquity seasonal agricultural cycles were commonly associated with various gods and fertility myths, some of which were performed or read publicly every year. The fertility of the land was to be entirely divorced from foreign gods, as Yahweh alone would provide for His people. So when I read Exodus chapter 23 and verses 13, my mind instantly goes to the second commandment from a few chapters earlier, found in Exodus chapter 20 in verses 3, where it reads, You shall have no other gods before me. And as I was putting this teaching together, I did a brief search on the many different gods of the ancient world during the times of Israel, and in my search of pagan deities of the Old Testament, the Faith Life Study Bible lists at least 26 different gods during the times of Israel, such as the god of Dagon, Moloch, Nebo, Ashtaroth, Baal, and many others. But as we look more into this verse and at the many different gods that were worshipped in those days, we can quickly find ourselves asking the question, how could this verse be applied to each of our lives in the present time that we're living in? Since the names of these gods today aren't worshipped or mentioned by most unbelievers, or even more so to the believer. But first, let me say this before going any further. Just so I'm clear here, this isn't my own personal interpretation of this verse, because I'm sure this verse in context had its purpose in that day, and I still believe it could be applied today as well from a different perspective. And I also believe it's way deeper than I can even explain. So I'm just going to do my best here. But This is just my thoughts and or my opinions on what I feel could be used as an application regarding this verse in the present time that you and I are living in. So as we look at this passage, this time let us use a different word in the place of the word name by replacing it with the word reputation, since name and reputation can mean the same in Hebrew. They can be interchangeable. And it reads, "Pay attention to all that I have said to you, and make no mention of the reputation of other gods, nor let it be heard on your lips." Or you could say, "Let not the reputation of these gods be heard on your lips." So if I can halfway make this make sense and applicable for you and me today, we don't have to necessarily call out the literal names of these gods on our lips, but their reputation becomes our reputation, and their worship becomes our worship. And this can be done in many shapes and forms. And you may ask the question, how can this be? First of all, if what we're doing isn't from the God of Israel, then it's from another. Psalm chapter 150:6 reads, "Let everything that has breath praise the Lord." Praise the Lord. Also, Psalms chapter 145:21 reads, "My mouth will speak the praise of the Lord, and let all flesh bless His holy name forever and ever." So whatever we do, when we do it, needs to be spiritually profitable to those in our circle and to those who we encounter. So there could be many ways that we can allow the names or the reputation of other gods to be heard on our lips. So we could ask the question, what is it in our life that could possibly connect us to a false deity or a foreign god? This is only something you and I can answer, because only you and I know what that thing is. We have to ask ourselves, what are some things you and I just can't let go of? And let me interject here that if we're not too careful, each one of us can find it very easy to create a golden calf type of God in our life based on what consumes us, controls us, and or captivates us, which can have a tendency to take us back to our comfort zone in a place of familiarity. And whatever we are consuming, if whatever we're consuming isn't from Yahweh, before long it will be revealed through our speech with words that can be heard on our lips. In other words, if I can put it this way, you will regurgitate what you believe in, whether it be good or bad. So whatever we worship will expose who we worship. So if we take a look at Exodus chapter 14, verses 2 through 4, we can see what consumed and captivated Israel. Israel made it very clear that they wanted to go back to a place of familiarity and a place of comfort. They wanted to go back to Egypt. So let's take a look at Exodus chapter 14, verses 2 through 4, and it reads, "And all the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The whole congregation said to them, Would that we have died in the land of Egypt, or would that we have died in this wilderness? Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become a prey. Would it not be better for us to go back to Egypt?" And they said to one another, "Let us choose a leader and go back to Egypt." So rather than looking back to the gods of our past for our place of refuge, we need to look to the God of Israel, who is our refuge. He is the one that we can take comfort in. In Numbers chapter 11, verses 4 through 6, it reads, "Now the rabble that was among them had a strong craving. And the people of Israel also wept again and said, Oh, that we had meat to eat. We remember the fish we ate in Egypt that cost nothing, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. But now our strength is dried up, and there is nothing at all but this manna to look at." So, as I bring this session to a close, let me say that whatever you and I crave will be revealed in our character, in our speech, behavior, and our words. You will either crave the food of Egypt or the manna from heaven. You will either have the language of Egypt on our lips, or your mouth will speak the praises of the Lord. And with that being said, we can't allow the false gods of this world to consume us. And if they are consuming us, they will speak through us. And if I can put it this way, when we do this, then we are allowing the names and or reputations of the many gods out there, whether we know their names or not, they're all false deities of many different origins. We're allowing them to be heard on our lips. Their reputation is being heard on our lips rather than the God of Israel. So as we go about our way, let the praises of our Creator King and His holy name and His reputation be heard on our lips wherever we go. I hope you were blessed by this presentation. Until next time, shalom.